If your dog starts staring at the closet door, do not open it. It was just another normal night at home. I had finished up work for the day and was relaxing on the couch, watching some TV before bed. My dog Rex was curled up next to me, dozing off as I gently pet his head. Things were calm and quiet when suddenly Rex's head perked up. His eyes were fixed on my bedroom door across the room. It was slightly ajar, and the closet door on the other side was visible in the crack. Rex was staring intently, unblinking, focused on that closet door. I called his name, but he didn't break his gaze. His body was tense and alert now, still zoning in on the closet. This was strange behavior for him. He's usually lazy and oblivious once he's cozied up for the night. But now something had his undivided attention. At first I thought maybe he had heard or smelled an intruder, so I got up cautiously to inspect. But as I approached the bedroom, Rex suddenly sprang up and rushed over, standing firmly between me and the door. He turned to look at me with pleading eyes, then stared back at the closet and let out a low growl. Now I was creeped out. Rex was clearly warning me away from that closet. Every instinct told me to listen to him, but my curiosity was overwhelming. What was in there that had him so spooked? He had never acted this way before. Against my better judgment, I reached down to nudge Rex aside so I could open the door just a crack. Rex let out a yelp and jumped in front of me, blocking my hand. His eyes were begging me to stop. I considered forcing my way past him, but the genuine fear in his eyes made me pause. I knelt down and ruffled his fur. "Good boy," I said. "I'll trust you on this." Rex licked my hand approvingly. But over the next few nights, the pattern continued. We'd be relaxing as usual when suddenly Rex would tense up, eyes locked on the closet door. And every time I got close, he would adamantly stand in my way. Why was he so afraid of that closet? The question ate away at me constantly. I had to know what was in there. My curiosity was becoming an obsession. One night I waited until Rex was in a deep sleep, then snuck off the couch. I tiptoed towards the bedroom, holding my breath. But somehow Rex sensed me. He sprung up and darted over, cutting me off from the door and barking loudly. I lost my patience and yelled at him to move. He cowered briefly, then stubbornly resumed his post in front of the door. I tried to shove him aside, but he nipped at me. We struggled for a minute before I finally gave up. I knew this was deeply disturbing to Rex, and I couldn't force him to face his fear just to satisfy my own intrigue. But the mystery consumed my thoughts. Why had this suddenly become an issue? That closet door was barely ever shut, and Rex had never cared before. What changed? Did he hear or smell something in there that I couldn't detect? His senses were far superior to mine, so I couldn't rule out that possibility. The best explanation I could come up with was a false pregnancy. Female dogs sometimes think they're pregnant and become overprotective. Rex had recently spent a heat cycle with a neighbor's female dog, so maybe those maternal instincts were kicking in and making him hyper-vigilant to any potential threats. But that theory felt like a stretch, and it didn't explain why he seemed laser-focused on that one closet, rather than just generally on guard. No, clearly there was something specific in there that terrified him to his core. I couldn't let this go unsolved. I had to find out what was disturbing Rex so severely. I was willing to take extreme measures to get past him and open that door. Luckily, I wouldn't have to. One morning, I came out of my bedroom and couldn't find Rex anywhere. He wasn't begging at the kitchen door for breakfast, as usual. I wandered through the house calling his name. No response. Finally, I looked down the hall and noticed the bedroom door was wide open. My heart dropped. I inched closer, calling Rex's name but hearing only silence. Peeking into the bedroom, I saw that the closet door was also gaping open. Rex was sitting halfway inside the closet, utterly still and staring blankly ahead. He didn't seem to hear me at all. I approached cautiously and crouched down beside him. His eyes were open but glazed over, fixed on something deep in the closet that I couldn't see. My heart pounded as I waved my hand in front of his face. No reaction. "Rex!" I shouted, making him flinch slightly. That seemed to break some of his vacant stare, and he turned to look at me with clouded eyes. After a moment, he began slowly backing out of the closet, keeping his body low in submission. Once we were a few feet away, Rex snapped to attention and began trembling and whining. He turned to lick my hand nervously, as if apologizing for something. But all I felt was overwhelming relief to have him back. We sat huddled together outside the room for a long time, as I reassuringly petted him. Eventually, he rested his head in my lap and closed his eyes. I could feel his racing heartbeat start to calm as he drifted off. But now the closet door was wide open, beckoning me to finally investigate its secrets. Every fiber of my being still wanted to know what was inside. But I couldn't bring myself to look. Rex had made it abundantly clear that whatever it was wasn't meant to be seen. Some doors are better left closed. This was a portal to another dimension I could scarcely comprehend. Respecting Rex's warning was more important than satisfying my own foolish curiosity. I decided then and there to close off the bedroom and never open that closet again. Rex and I have slept peacefully on the couch ever since the mysteries of the closet were finally put to rest, though its presence still lurks in the dark recesses of my mind. It started a few weeks ago. At first, I thought I was just seeing things. You know how sometimes if you look at something from the corner of your eye, it can play tricks on you, just simple illusions or your mind filling in blanks. That's what I figured was happening anyway. But over the next few days, I kept catching brief glimpses of them. Dark humanoid shadows that would dart by in my peripheral vision. If I turned to look at them directly, there was nothing there. But I knew what I saw. The shapes were definitely real. I didn't mention anything to my friends or family. I was afraid they'd think I was crazy or seeing things. But deep down, I knew I wasn't just imagining it all. Something was there. I started trying to take covert photos of the shadows when they appeared, hoping to capture some evidence. But they moved too quickly or hid just outside of the frame. Things got stranger at night when I was home alone. I'd noticed movement outside my windows or down the hallway, but whenever I worked up the nerve to go check, nothing seemed amiss. My cat didn't seem bothered at all, which gave me some comfort. If he sensed anything truly sinister, I figured he'd be hissing or hiding from the shadows. Still, I made sure my baseball bat was within reach while I slept, just in case. Over time, the brief glimpses became more frequent. At work, at the grocery store, even driving in my car, the shadow people continued to appear and disappear when I wasn't looking directly at them. I started to feel like I was being followed or hunted. Their elusiveness terrified me. What did they want from me? One evening, I got an answer I did not expect. As I was washing dishes, I spotted one of the shadow figures directly over my shoulder in the kitchen window's reflection. Spinning around fast, I cried out, "What do you want from me? Just leave me alone." That's when a harsh, gravelly voice rasped back, "Do not acknowledge us." I stood frozen in shock. Not only had this thing communicated with me, but its voice was chillingly inhuman. Before I could respond, the shadow vanished right before my eyes. Over the next few days, the encounters became more frequent than ever. They were appearing almost everywhere I looked now, lingering longer each time. My parents noticed I seemed paranoid and asked me repeatedly what was wrong, but I still couldn't bring myself to tell them about the shadow people. I knew it sounded crazy. Then late one night as I lay awake in bed, I felt an unmistakable presence in my room. There in the darkness stood one of the shadow figures, featureless and shifting, gazing down at me silently. My blood turned to ice as sheer terror gripped my insides. It took all my strength not to scream or scramble away. With my eyes wide and hands trembling, I whispered softly, "Please, just tell me what you want." The shadow replied in that same guttural rasp, "We have already warned you. Do not acknowledge us." Before I could react, the entity rushed forward and gripped me by the arms with icy, inhuman hands. Paralyzed with fear and unable to make a sound, I listened helplessly as the shadow creature uttered these final, chilling words. "You will see no more. Now we must take your sight." Everything went black. I felt excruciating pain in my eyes and twisted violently away from the shadow's grasp. Suddenly, my vision began to return, blurry and muted. I expected to see the shadow still leering over me, but I was alone. Frantically, I leapt up and flipped on the lights. My room looked just as I left it. No signs of disturbance or struggle at all. I gasped and ran to check my eyes in the mirror. They seemed normal, yet I knew deep down that something fundamental had changed. My sight felt weaker, my world dimmer. It's been weeks since that horrific night. I've told no one about my experiences, just as the shadow commanded. I'm simply pretending that my worsening vision is the result of needing new glasses. But I know the real cause. They're still out there, waiting for me to slip up, watching for any slight acknowledgement, so all I can do is keep my mouth shut and my eyes facing forward. No matter how tempting it is to turn my head and look, I dare not sneak even the slightest peripheral glance. For if I see one again and betray their warning, I know next time they will take far more than just my sight. It was just another normal night on the job for me. I'm a security guard who works the graveyard shift at an office building downtown. My job is pretty simple. Just sit in the control room all night long and monitor the CCTV feeds from around the building and the surrounding property. Nothing too exciting ever happens, but I don't mind. The quiet nights give me plenty of time to catch up on reading or watch movies on my phone. But tonight felt different right from the start. As I settled into the control room chair and started flipping through the camera feeds, I noticed something odd. Most of the cameras showed the usual empty hallways, stairwells, and offices. But one camera in particular was showing some kind of distortion. At first, I figured it was just technical difficulties with the camera. We have an older system, and sometimes the footage gets fuzzy or cuts out entirely. So, I made a note to have our tech guy come check it out in the morning. However, over the next few hours, the footage from that one camera kept getting more and more unsettling. It started with just innocent flickers and flashes of light, but then shapes and shadows started appearing out of nowhere. It was hard to make out any distinct figures, just dark, blurry masses that would drift across the frame. The strange shapes moved unpredictably, sometimes fast and erratic, other times slow and lingering. I felt a growing sense of unease in the pit of my stomach. This was more than just a technical glitch. Something felt off, really off. But I still couldn't pinpoint what exactly I was seeing. So I kept watching the abnormal camera feed, searching for some reasonable explanation. As the night dragged on, the disturbing shapes and movements intensified. They seemed to be swirling and converging in the center of the screen. It looked almost like a vortex of darkness. An icy chill ran down my spine. I had never seen anything like this in my several years working security jobs. Nervously, I glanced around the empty control room just to reassure myself that I was still alone. At about 3:17 a.m., the camera footage took an even more terrifying turn. A shape emerged right in the center of the swirling black mass. It resembled a human figure, but contorted and elongated in all the wrong ways. I sat paralyzed, watching this dark, humanoid entity twist and contort on the screen. It crawled unnaturally across the floor, then slowly turned its misshapen head up to stare directly at the camera. Where its face should have been, there was only a swirling void of darkness. My heart pounded in my chest. I had to look away from the monitor for a minute to catch my breath. "This can't be real," I muttered to myself. "It must be some kind of messed up video distortion." But deep down, I knew this was no glitch. Something was in that building with me. Something sinister that I did not want to comprehend. I considered calling the police, but what would I even tell them? That I saw some supernatural being on the CCTV footage? They'd think I had lost my mind or was playing a dumb prank. Plus, I had zero evidence to back up my claims if the footage returned to normal by the time they arrived. I opted to continue sitting tight, but I made sure to keep the pepper spray in my pocket within reach just in case. Over the next hour, the humanoid entity continued to crawl through the building. exploring the offices and hallways. It seemed curious, even playful at times. It would pick up objects like staplers and coffee mugs, turning them around with its long, spindly fingers. The brief glimpses of its face still showed only inky blackness, like a void where features should have been. Sometimes it seemed aware of the cameras. It would pause and do almost a peekaboo gesture at the lens or wave coyly at the red blinking light. Could it see me sitting here watching it all unfold? The possibility filled me with dread. But about an hour before sunrise, the entity's demeanor suddenly shifted. It turned aggressive, even violent. It started overturning desks and shattering glass doors. I jolted with fear each time I heard the destructive sounds coming through my monitor speakers. Down the hallways it ran, letting out inhuman shrieks and howls that sent shivers down my spine. Any sense of playfulness or curiosity was now replaced by what I can only describe as raw rage. Right around 5:15 a.m., as daylight approached, the entity seemed to retreat back toward the center of the building. The swirling void opened up once more on the CCTV footage. For several long minutes, the dark humanoid twisted furiously around the vortex, like it was being pulled back into some invisible dimension. But before fully disappearing, it turned to stare directly into the camera one last time. Inside that void of darkness, two glowing eyes suddenly appeared. They burned red, full of wrath and malevolence. Then in an instant, the entity and the vortex vanished from the screen. The remaining morning hours passed by tensely, as I waited for some sign of the entity's return. But the cameras stayed mercifully still. When the day crew arrived at 8, I said nothing. I clocked out as usual, got in my car, and drove home. I kept checking my rearview mirror, half expecting to see that dark humanoid figure in the back seat. Now I'm home, doors locked, blinds drawn, but I still can't escape the chilling memories of what I witnessed last night. I'll never know what that thing was or where it came from, and even scarier, I have no idea if it will return again tonight. All I know for sure is that I'll never look at that building's CCTV footage the same way again.